Welcome back. Today we're diving deep into speaking and listening. We do them every day, but how often do we really think about them?
Right.
Our guide is Julian Treasure, a sound consultant.
And author.
He founded the sound agency to, explore sound.
Yeah, how it shapes our world.
We're using his book, How to Be Heard.
And some interviews.
So get ready to unlock the power of speaking and listening.
What strikes me about Treasure's work is that it shows how sound impacts our lives. Like, he calls hearing a miracle we take for granted.
Totally. We just assume our ears are working.
Yeah.
But there's so much more happening.
Exactly. And he says our relationship with sound starts way earlier than we realize.
Oh.
In the womb.
Really?
Like 12 weeks after conception.
Wow, 12 weeks. I had no clue. So what are we even hearing at that point?
Well, one of the main sounds is the mother's heartbeat, which is interesting because it's in 3/time. Like a waltz.
Wait, so that's why we love waltzes. It's like a sonic memory.
Yeah.
From way back.
Could be. But it shows how our sonic environment matters, even from the very beginning.
It makes me think of those neonatal units, all the beeps and stuff. Not exactly peaceful. Is there research on whether that kind of noise is actually harmful?
There is. Research shows noisy environments can impact a baby's development. It's because of what's called cross-modal effects.
Cross-mode.
It means our senses influence each other. Like, noisy restaurants can actually make your food taste worse.
Wow. I never knew that. It really shows you how connected our senses are.
Exactly. And that connects to Evelyn Glennie.
Oh, the percussionist.
Yeah, who's profoundly deaf. She talks about the beauty of everyday sounds, even the ones we might think are, not so nice.
Wait, how can someone who's deaf experience sound? That's fascinating.
Glennie feels sound through vibrations, and she thinks even jarring noises can spark imagination, especially for kids.
Huh.
She's talked about how a kid might hear a loud sound and connect it to something they know, like their dad's lawnmower or the fridge.
That's such a cool way to think about it. Finding the amazing in the everyday. And she's doing this all through vibration, not like traditional hearing. I wonder if that different way of experiencing sound makes her appreciate it even more than those of us who kind of take it for granted.
Interesting thought. It definitely challenges us to become more conscious listeners,
Yeah.
To really tune in, not just let it all wash over us.
Speaking of better communication, Treasure has these 7 deadly sins of speaking. Bad habits that, they kill communication. I bet we're all guilty of a few, right?
Oh, definitely. But knowing them is the first step. So let's start with gossip. We all know what that is, talking about others.
Gossip is a total communication killer. It's all negativity, it breaks trust. What about judging? How does that get in the way?
Judging is like condemning someone or their ideas without really getting them. It shuts down communication. You don't learn anything that way.
Yeah, it's like we're building walls instead of bridges. And then there's negativity, which, that's pretty self-explanatory.
Right. No one wants to listen to a constant downer.
Exactly. Yeah. It's draining. And what about complaining? Is there a good kind of complaining? Or is it all just griping?
There's a difference. Like, good complaining is when you're trying to fix a problem, but just complaining about stuff you can't change, that just brings everyone down.
I do that sometimes.
Yeah.
It's a bad habit. Then there's excuses. Where do those fit in?
Excuses are all about blaming others, not taking responsibility. And that stops you from growing, It breaks trust. It's important to own your mistakes and learn from them.
Right. Okay. And we have exaggerating and lying. Those are pretty obvious sins, I'd say.
Totally. They wreck your credibility. Once trust is gone, it's really hard to get back.
And lastly, dogmatism. That one's maybe less obvious. How would you explain it?
Dogmatism is when you think your opinion is a fact and you're not open to other views. It's like impossible to have a real conversation with someone like that.
Yeah, like their mind is made up. Nothing you say can change it. So how do we even fight these sins? They seem pretty like human nature.
They are, but first, we got to know which ones we're doing.
So self-awareness is key. Then what?
Then you start choosing how you talk. It's like a detox for your communication.
I like that. A detox. Okay, so we've cleaned out the bad stuff. How do we build better speaking?
Treasure uses the word hail for that. Honesty, authenticity, integrity, and love.
Those sound pretty straightforward. Let's break them down.
Sure. Honesty is the basis of trust. Being truthful builds strong relationships.
Makes sense. People listen to someone they believe is being honest. What about authenticity? Is that just being yourself?
It's a big part of it, but it's more than just saying whatever's in your head. It's about your words matching your actions and your beliefs, showing up as, you all the time.
I love that. What about integrity? What's that look like when we're talking?
Integrity is keeping your promises. What you say matches what you do. That builds trust. People know you're reliable.
And finally, love. This one seems out of place. How does love fit into communication?
It might seem strange, but Treasure isn't talking about romantic love here. It's about having compassion when you communicate, genuinely wishing the other person well.
So it's about good intentions behind our words.
Exactly. It's speaking and listening with kindness, even when you disagree.
I like that. It connects to what we were talking about with being conscious listeners. Treasure's saying that to speak powerfully, we have to be more conscious in all parts of communication.
Yes. Most of us listen unconsciously. We miss out on all the richness of sound around us.
So how do we become better listeners? What are some practical things we can do?
Well, Treasure has 5 core practices. The first might surprise you. It's silence.
Silence. How does that make you a better listener?
It's about taking a moment of quiet to reset your hearing, to notice the subtle sounds, like cleansing your palate, but for your ears.
I never thought about it like that. So we reset our ears, then what?
Then comes the mixer. You become aware of all the sounds around you, even the boring ones and the amazing ones.
So tuning into the whole symphony of sounds that's happening.
Exactly. And as you do that, you start to enjoy those sounds. That's the third practice. It's like consciously enjoying something that sounds good, like birds singing or rain falling.
Like really being present with those sounds. Okay, what's the fourth one?
Listening with your ears, eyes, and heart. This is about really engaging in the conversation. You're attentive, making eye contact, and you're empathetic.
It's not just the words then. You're paying attention to their body language, how they're feeling.
Yes. And lastly, we have listening from. This is about choosing your perspective when you listen. You could listen from curiosity, compassion, or even non-judgment.
That's interesting. Like you're shifting your mental position to understand better. What would listening from curiosity sound like?
If someone's talking about something you don't know, instead of just listening, you ask questions to learn. Or if someone has a different view than you listen to understand, not just wait for your turn to talk.
That's a great way to put it. So these 5 practices give us a good start to being better listeners. Are there other things we can do to improve even more?
Definitely. There are 2 more, and they're really useful. One is listening for. You're actively looking for specific info when you're listening, like having a mental filter, so you focus on the important stuff.
So like in a presentation, you'd be listening for the main takeaways, right?
Exactly. Or if a friend's going through a tough time, you're listening for clues about how to help them.
That makes sense. What's the second one?
RASA. It stands for receive, appreciate, summarize, ask.
Oh, I like that. It's like a system for really active listening. Can you break it down?
Sure. Receive is giving your full attention to their words, their body language, everything. Then appreciate, you acknowledge their message even if you disagree. Just a simple I see or I understand.
So you're showing you're there with them no matter what you think. What about summarize?
You put their main points in your own words to check you got it right, and it lets them clarify if you missed something.
No more misunderstandings. And finally, ask. What kind of questions should we be asking?
Questions that help you understand better. Ask for examples, why they think that way, or just more about what they said.
RSS is great. I need to use that. We can't talk about good communication without talking about stories, though.
You're so right. Storytelling is super powerful. It grabs people, makes things memorable. It's how we've always shared knowledge.
It feels like there are so many ways to tell a story. Are there any common things that make a story work well?
There are, actually. Researchers found 6 main story types, like formulas for storytelling, based on data.
Wait, really? Formulas?
Kind of. They call them rags to riches, riches to rags, man in a hole, Icarus, Cinderella, and Oedipus. Each one has a different shape, a different feeling. They reflect what humans experience,
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So knowing these types could help us tell better stories.
For sure. And there's John Ronson, a great author and storyteller. He says authenticity is key and passion. The best stories come from real interest and excitement.
I've read some of his stuff. It's so engaging. It always feels so honest and personal, even when the topics are kind of tough.
Exactly. He's not afraid to be vulnerable, to share his own life. That makes his stories powerful. And that passion, it comes through, It makes it much more interesting than just dry facts.
It's like the passion brings the story to life. So as we try to be better communicators, there's also technology to think about. It's changed how we talk, for good and bad.
Definitely. Technology is powerful. It opens up so many possibilities, but it also means we talk face-to-face less. We're always connected to our devices, but less connected to each other.
Sherry Turkle, who wrote Alone Together, she says technology promises connection, but often leads to disconnection. We choose virtual over real life.
Yeah, it's easy to think we're being social when we're just scrolling and texting.
It's like we're going for quantity over quality. Right. Lots of surface connections instead of deep ones. Can we balance it out, though? Use technology without disconnecting?
That's the big question, right? I think we can, but it takes effort. We need to use it in a way that helps our communication, not hurts it.
So being intentional about how we use it, how do we do that? Any practical tips?
One way is setting boundaries. Like have times where you don't use tech, or places in your house where phones are off limits.
It's easy to lose track of time when you're scrolling. What about when we are using technology to communicate? How do we make it more meaningful?
You can focus on quality. Don't just send quick texts. Have a real conversation, like a video call, or even better, meet up in person.
So much gets lost in text. Tone, what you really mean. It's easy to get the wrong idea.
Totally. Be mindful of how you come across online, too. Are you being authentic on social media or just trying to look good? Are you adding to real conversations or just adding to the noise?
It's easy to forget that real life isn't perfect, like social media.
Yeah.
But that's what makes it beautiful, right?
It is. And that brings us back to authenticity. When we're real, flaws and all, that's when we truly connect.
I love that. So we talked about the 7 deadly sins of speaking. Are there similar traps when it comes to listening, things that get in the way of really hearing someone?
Treasure calls these leeches. They suck the power from our communication. And just like the speaking sins, we all do them sometimes.
Okay, tell me about these leeches. What's the first one?
Negative self-talk. That voice in your head saying you're not good enough, it can really mess with your confidence. And then you don't really listen or engage.
It's like our own thoughts are drowning out the other person. How do we quiet that negative voice?
First, you got to notice it. Just pay attention to what it's saying.
So become aware of it, then what?
Then you challenge it. Is it really true? What proof do you have? Usually, those negative thoughts come from fear, not reality.
So we replace those thoughts with positive ones, thoughts that build us up.
Exactly. Next leech is looking good. This is all about trying to impress people, trying to seem perfect.
I think we've all been there, putting on a mask instead of being ourselves.
And it doesn't work. People can usually tell when you're not being real, and then you can't connect authentically.
It's much better to be genuine, even if it means showing your flaws. How do we get over that need to look good all the time?
It takes practice and courage. Start with accepting yourself, even the parts you don't love. Remember, everyone's imperfect.
No one's perfect all the time, even if social media makes it look that way. Okay, what's the third leech?
People pleasing. You're always trying to get everyone to like you.
I used to do that all the time. It's exhausting. How did that mess up our communication?
You end up saying yes when you mean no. You ignore your own needs, and you don't say what you really think because you're afraid of upsetting someone.
So we need to set boundaries, be more assertive about what we need.
Yes. It's about respecting yourself as much as you respect others. The next leech is rushing. It shows up in how we speak, Andy, how we listen.
I can see that. When you rush, you miss so much.
You miss details, you don't process what's being said. It's like you're trying to cram too much in, and then nothing makes sense.
So we need to slow down, be present, give ourselves time to think and respond.
Exactly, and that goes for both speaking and listening. We need time to absorb what we hear and come up with a thoughtful response.
I'm noticing a theme here. A lot of these leeches come from not being self-aware.
You got it. The more self-aware you are, the easier it is to spot these bad habits and fix them. Self-awareness is like the key to good communication.
What's the fifth leech then?
It's filtering. Everyone sees the world through filters, you know? But when we're not aware of them, they twist how we communicate.
So filters are like colored glasses, changing how we see things.
Exactly. They're colored by our experiences, our beliefs, even our mood.
How do we catch those filters before they mess up what we're trying to say?
Ask yourself questions. What am I assuming here? Am I seeing the whole picture? Am I letting my biases get in the way?
So challenge yourself. What's the next leech?
Multitasking. Everyone thinks it's great, but our brains aren't wired for it. If you try to do too many things at once, you end up doing all of them poorly.
Guilty. I always have a million tabs open. My phone's buzzing. The TV's on. It's like my brain can't keep up.
And it's so rude to the other person. If you're on your phone while they're talking, it's like you're saying their words don't matter.
Yeah, you're not giving them your full attention. How do we break that multitasking habit? Be more present.
You have to notice the urge to do something else. Like when you want to check your phone, just notice that and resist it. Choose to be present with the person in front of you.
Choose the person over the distraction. Okay, what about the last leech?
Giving your power away. This is when you let others control your emotions and your actions.
So it's about taking responsibility for how you feel, how you react, instead of blaming others.
Exactly. It's like you're letting someone else drive your life, and then you end up feeling helpless.
How do we avoid doing that?
Be assertive. Set boundaries. You have the right to your own thoughts and feelings. You don't need to apologize for them. Stand up for yourself, but respectfully.
It sounds like all these leeches are tied together.
Yeah.
To overcome them, you need to know yourself, be confident, and have healthy boundaries.
You got it. When you start working on these leeches, you'll be communicating in a way that's more powerful and more genuine.
Okay, we've talked a lot about what not to do. What should we be doing? What are some actual things we can do to speak and listen better?
Good question. Pay attention to your words. Specifically, what Treasure calls danger words. They weaken your message.
Danger words, like what?
Should is the big one. It's judgmental, makes people defensive.
Like we're forcing our opinions on them. Instead of saying, you should do this, how should we say it?
Try something like, have you thought about this? Or, what are your thoughts on this?
I see. Instead of judging, you're curious and inviting their input. What's another danger word?
Just. It downplays things.
Like saying, it was just a small project, or I just helped a little.
Exactly. You sound less confident.
So instead of, I just did this, own it. Just say, I did this. No minimizing.
Yes. Be proud of what you do. What other danger words are there?
Okay, should and just are on my list.
Yeah.
What else?
Actually, it contradicts people, makes them feel wrong.
Like, actually, that's not how it happened. Or, actually, I think you're wrong. It definitely shuts down the conversation.
It does. So instead of actually to correct someone, just state your view without making them wrong.
So think about how your words make them feel. Respect matters. Okay, should, just, and actually. What's number 4?
But it negates what you just said, creates conflict.
It's like giving a compliment and then taking it back.
Yeah.
I appreciate your work, but see, it's not good enough.
Exactly. You're saying their effort doesn't matter, and it makes people feel unheard.
So instead of but, to disagree, is there another word?
Often you can just use and, like, I understand your point, and I see it differently.
I like that. You're building a bridge, not a wall. So far we have should, just, actually, and but. Any more danger words hiding out there?
Watch out for like as a filler word.
Like, when people say like all the time? Yeah, that's distracting.
It makes you sound unsure of yourself. Try to catch yourself and cut those out.
It's like decluttering your speech. Okay, we have our danger word list, but what about words that make our message stronger?
Treasure calls those power words. They grab attention, convey emotion.
I want more power words. What are they?
Sensory words are a good example. They appeal to our 5 senses.
Like vibrant, melodious, delicious. Words that create an experience.
You got it. They help the listener really see and feel what you're describing.
I love that. What other kind of power words are there?
Emotional words. They trigger strong feelings.
Like joyful, heartbreaking, inspiring.
Exactly. They make your message hit home.
It's like good storytelling. It makes you feel like you're part of the story. What's next?
Action words. They create a sense of movement, urgency.
Like achieve, transform, discover.
Yep. They make people want to take action.
Perfect for motivational speeches or sales pitches.
For sure. And lastly, there are metaphorical words. They compare 2 things that don't seem related.
Like a heart of gold or a storm of emotions.
Exactly. They add depth and creativity to your language.
It's like painting a picture with your words. So using these power words can make our speaking more engaging and memorable. What about how we actually say those words?
That's just as important as the words themselves. It's called prosody.
Prosody. Sounds fancy.
It's a fancy word for the rhythm, stress, and intonation of your voice. It's what gives your words meaning beyond just the dictionary definition.
It's like the music of how we speak.
Isn't it?
Just like a melody can make you feel things, so can someone's voice.
Well, exactly. A flat voice makes anything boring, but a dynamic voice, that's what keeps people hooked.
So how do we get better at that? Are there exercises?
Pay attention to how you sound. Record yourself reading, then listen back. Notice your pitch, your pace, your volume. Is it flat or does it go up and down? Are you rushing or do you pause?
Great tip. I'm trying that.
Yeah.
What else should we be noticing?
Your breathing. If you breathe shallowly, your voice will be weak. Deep breaths give you power.
I do that when I'm nervous. My voice gets all shaky.
That's normal. Deep breathing is key for a strong voice.
So how do you train yourself to breathe better, especially when you're nervous?
Practice deep breaths from your diaphragm. Fill your lungs completely. There are tons of breathing exercises online. Even a few deep breaths before a presentation can help you calm down.
Good advice. What about pausing? Good speakers use pauses a lot.
Pauses are powerful. They emphasize points, give the listener time to think, and create suspense.
It's not just what you say, but the space between the words.
Exactly. Silence can be even more powerful.
I'm going to start noticing pauses more, both when I'm talking and when I'm listening. Anything else about how we deliver our message?
Oh yeah, nonverbal communication. That often speaks louder than our words.
Like those old silent films. They had to tell the whole story with their faces and bodies.
Exactly. Your expressions, gestures, posture, and eye contact all matter.
So how do we use those things on purpose to make our speaking better?
Notice what you're doing. Are you slouching? Making eye contact? Does your face match what you're saying? Once you know what you're doing, you can use it to make your message stronger.
So to show confidence, you'd stand tall, make eye contact, and use open gestures.
Exactly. For warmth and empathy, you might smile, lean in, and even gently touch someone.
It's like another layer of meaning. Our bodies are talking too.
They are, and when your words and body match, your message hits harder.
Okay, we've got all this theory about speaking and listening. Let's get practical. Imagine you have a big presentation coming up. How do you prepare for it? Make sure it goes well?
Preparation is everything. It's about setting yourself up to succeed.
So where do we begin?
Know your audience. Who are they? What are they interested in? What are they expecting?
So you tailor your message to them, make it relevant. Like, I talk differently to CEOs than to college students.
Totally. Different words, different examples, different visuals.
Got it. So you know your audience. What's next?
Figure out your message. What's the main thing you want them to take away? What points do you need to make to get them there?
Like boiling it down to the essence. What do you absolutely want them to remember?
Yep. An outline or storyboard can help you organize your thoughts and make sure it flows logically.
That's a good idea. I'm visual, so I like the storyboard thing. So you have the structure. Now what? How do you fill it in?
Think about stories, examples, data that will bring your points to life.
This is where those power words come in.
For sure. Don't forget visuals, slides, pictures, videos, even props. They make it more interesting.
Especially these days, people are used to seeing stuff, not just hearing it.
Visuals can really help people remember your message.
Okay, so you've got your content, your visuals, then what?
Time to practice. Out loud, in front of a mirror, or some friends. Rehearsing helps you get comfortable, smooth out rough spots, and perfect how you deliver it.
Practice is so important. I thought I had something down pat, then I get up there, I'm stumbling over my words.
It also helps you make sure you're not going over time.
Don't be afraid to ask for feedback from people you trust. They can catch things you might miss.
Feedback is so helpful. It helps you see things from a different angle.
Okay, so we've got knowing the audience, crafting the message, content, visuals, and practice. What about the day of the presentation? Any tips for making sure it goes smoothly?
It's all about those nerves, right? Getting yourself in the right mindset.
I think everyone gets nervous, even if they're used to presenting.
Totally normal. You just got to use that nervous energy to your advantage.
How do we do that? Calm those nerves.
Warm up your voice and your body. Do tongue twisters, scales, stretch, do jumping jacks, go for a walk.
I've never thought about warming up my voice for a presentation.
It makes a difference. It gets you loose and ready.
Like prepping your instrument. What about mentally preparing?
Visualize yourself doing a great job. See yourself confident, engaging the audience, nailing your message.
Athletes do that, right? Does it really work?
Visualization is super powerful. It can boost your confidence and calm you down. It programs your mind for success.
I'll have to try it. What about during the presentation itself? How do you stay calm and focused once you're up there?
Breathe. Seriously, deep breaths. It calms you down and helps you focus. Breathe before you start and keep breathing deeply the whole time.
Deep breaths are so simple, but so helpful. What about engaging the audience, making sure they're with you?
Connect with them. Eye contact is huge.
Eye contact can be scary when there are a lot of people. Any tips for making it less awkward?
Don't try to look at everyone. Pick a few friendly faces and focus on them. Hold their gaze for a few seconds, then move on.
That makes sense. What about smiling? Does that help?
A genuine smile makes you seem more approachable and trustworthy. It's like you're welcoming them in.
And smiling makes you feel better too.
It does. And as you're talking, vary your voice. Change your tone and pace. Pause for emphasis. Get louder for exciting parts. Softer for intimate moments.
It's like you're adding music to your speech.
Yeah,
What about gestures and movement? Should we be using those too?
definitely. Walk around, use your hands, let your body reflect your energy.
It brings your words to life.
Yeah,
And most importantly, be yourself.
yes. Authenticity is everything. People can tell if you're faking it.
Be genuine, let your passion show. That's great advice. What about everyday conversations not on a stage? Do these principles still apply?
They apply to all our communication, with friends, family, at work. Be present, be intentional, and be respectful.
So how do we bring that intention and presence to everyday conversations?
Be in the moment. Put down your phone. Make eye contact. Really listen.
Give them your full attention, make them feel heard.
And when it's your turn, be clear and concise. Use powerful language, skip the jargon, get to the point.
And be aware of your body language. Make sure it's matching your words.
And empathy. Try to see things from their side.
Empathy is so important. It builds relationships and helps us resolve conflicts.
It really is. And asking questions is a simple way to show empathy. It shows you're interested in listening.
So if we use these principles every day, we can communicate better and have stronger relationships. What about talking to kids? Anything special to keep in mind?
Kids are great communicators, but they need a different approach. They're still learning how to express themselves, and they might not always have the right words.
So be patient.
Exactly. Let them finish. Ask questions to make sure you understand.
It's easy to jump in and try to fix things, but they just need to be heard.
Right. And tell them it's okay to feel however they feel. Even if you don't agree, validate those feelings. Help them find healthy ways to express themselves.
What about body language? How does that work with kids?
It's super important. They pick up on that more than adults. Get down to their level, make eye contact, use a gentle voice.
You're creating a safe, trusting space. What about giving advice? Should we avoid that with kids?
Most of the time, kids just want someone to listen, not fix things. Don't jump in with solutions. Just listen without judging and be supportive.
Let them figure it out themselves.
Yeah.
What about being a good example? Do kids learn how to communicate by watching us?
Absolutely. They're always watching. Be a good listener yourself. Show them how it's done.
So by listening to kids with empathy and respect, we help them learn to communicate and we build strong relationships. Let's shift gears a bit and talk about listening in sales.
Sales listening is super important. It's not just about giving your pitch. It's about building trust and closing the deal by truly getting what the customer needs.
So you listen to understand, not just to reply.
Exactly. Listen to their needs, their worries. Ask open-ended questions. Repeat back what they say. Make sure you're on the same page.
Like, what's an open-ended question in sales?
Don't just ask, do you like this? They can just say yes or no. Ask, what are you looking for? Or what problems are you trying to solve?
Those are good. It makes them open up and you learn more.
Yep. Once you get what they need, you can tailor your pitch. You offer solutions that are relevant to them.
Instead of a generic pitch, you're making it personal. What about closing the deal? Does listening matter there too?
Totally. If you've listened well and offered what they need, you can ask for the sale. Even if they don't buy right then, the trust you built makes them more likely to come back later.
It's about building a relationship, not just a transaction. And good communication is key for that.
For sure. And good listening is especially important for leaders. Leaders who listen well create a culture of trust. People feel valued and heard.
They feel safe to speak their mind without being judged.
Exactly. Listening is one of the most important things a leader can do.
So how do we become better listening leaders? Any tips?
Create a safe space for communication. Let your team know you value their input, even if you don't agree with everything.
Sounds like listening from curiosity.
It is. Be genuinely interested in understanding.
Okay, so people feel safe to talk. How do we make sure we're really listening, not just waiting for our turn?
Listen actively. Make eye contact. Don't interrupt. Ask questions to clarify.
It's not just the words, it's the deeper meaning, the emotions. What do we do after they've shared?
Respond thoughtfully. Show them you heard their concerns. Offer support and work together to find solutions.
So take action based on what you heard.
Yes. And follow up later. If you promise to do something, actually do it. That builds trust.
It shows you are listening and that you value their input enough to act on it. So listening to your team builds a strong and successful team. We talked about the power of stories, but how do we use that power? What makes a story good, and how can we get better at telling them?
Stories can really capture an audience, explain complex ideas, and even inspire action.
Like magic with words.
It is. Stories touch our emotions in a way that facts and figures never can.
How do we create that magic? How do we tell better stories?
Choose stories that connect with your audience. Think about what will grab their attention, what will illustrate your point.
Find stories that they'll relate to. So if I'm talking about leadership, I might tell a story about a time I had to be a leader and how I dealt with it.
Exactly. That's way more interesting than just listing qualities of a good leader. And once you have your story, structure it. Beginning, middle, and end. Introduce characters, set up the conflict, build to a climax.
It's like taking them on a journey.
Yes. And use vivid language. Make them see and feel the story.
This is where those power words come in.
Totally. Make them feel like they're right there in the story with the characters.
And don't forget emotion. Stories that make you feel something, those are the ones you remember.
Emotions are what make a story stick. It's about connecting with people's hearts, not just their heads.
So stories are powerful tools for all parts of our lives. Now let's talk about something we often forget. Silence.
There's so much noise and stimulation all the time. It's like our minds never get a break.
It's true. Phones, podcasts, TV. It's like we're scared of silence.
But silence is powerful. It's good for reflection, connection, and impact. It helps us think, connect with ourselves, and really listen.
So how do we get more quiet into our communication? It seems strange that not talking could be better.
Just be more mindful. Do you really need to say something, or can you let the silence speak for itself?
Sometimes what you don't say is more powerful. Like when you just look at someone and you both know what the other is thinking without a word.
Exactly. Those moments are amazing. You can also use silence to create suspense.
Like when a speaker pauses before revealing something big.
Yes. A well-timed pause makes your words hit harder.
It gives your words space to sink in. I like that. What about using silence to connect with ourselves and others?
When we're quiet, we can hear our own thoughts and feelings, and we're more open to other people's thoughts and feelings too.
It creates space for deeper listening. In meditation, silence is how you quiet your mind and find peace.
It is. Silence is great for mindfulness. It helps you just be in the moment.
So we've talked about silence in general. What about pregnant pauses? I've heard that term for public speaking.
The pregnant pause is a silence on purpose. It creates anticipation, suspense.
It's like holding your breath before you jump into something. How do we use pregnant pauses well?
To emphasize a point. Pause before or after something important, and it will stick in people's minds.
It's like when a comedian pauses after a joke, and the laughter builds. What else?
To create drama or tension. Pause before revealing something, and it keeps people on the edge of their seats.
Like a cliffhanger. So pregnant pauses add a lot to our communication.
Now, let's think about technology again. It's amazing how it's changed how we talk, how we connect with people all over the world.
But there are new problems for communication too. It's easy to get lost in all the information and forget about real human connection.
Right. It's like we're trading quality for quantity. We have lots of shallow connections instead of a few close ones.
So how do we handle all this technology and use it to help us communicate better?
Be mindful. Don't let it take over. Make time for face-to-face interaction, for building real relationships.
So use it to connect, not to disconnect. What about when we are communicating through technology? How do we make that better?
Watch your tone and your language. It's easy to misunderstand things in writing, so be clear, concise, and respectful in your emails, texts, and posts.
It's true. It's so easy to misread a text, especially if you're already feeling a certain way about the person.
And be aware that you might not understand each other. Don't make assumptions.
Yeah, sometimes a quick call clears things up way faster than emails or texts.
Technology is a powerful tool. We just need to be smart about how we use it.
Now, let's zoom in on video conferencing. It's everywhere these days.
True. Video conferencing helps us connect with people all over in a way that's more personal than just calling or emailing. It's like bringing back that human element when you can't be there in person.
What are your tips for making video conferencing work well? How do you have a good, productive meeting online?
First, make sure your internet is good. And use a reliable platform. Nothing's worse than tech problems ruining a meeting.
I hate when the screen freezes or the call drops. What about where you are when you're on a video call? Does that matter?
Absolutely. Find a quiet spot with good lighting, no distractions, and make sure people can see you clearly. So no barking dogs or messy rooms in the background.
Got it. Keep it professional.
Right. And just like with in-person meetings, be present, be engaged, make eye contact, don't multitask. Really listen to what others are saying.
Yeah, it's easy to get distracted at home with everything else going on. But we should treat video meetings just like real meetings.
Exactly. Close those extra tabs, put your phone away, give the meeting your full attention.
What about our body language during video calls? Does that matter?
Of course. Your expressions, gestures, how you're sitting, it all shows up on video. Make sure it's matching what you're trying to say.
So even though you're not there in person, your body language still sends a message.
Yes. Be aware of it and use it to your advantage. Like, to show you're listening, look at the camera and nod your head.
Video calls can be a great way to stay connected and build relationships, but you have to be even more careful about how you communicate. Now let's talk about something that's important for all communication. Being assertive.
Assertiveness means you can say what you need and what you think, clearly and confidently, but still respect the other person. It's that balance, right? Not being a pushover, but not being aggressive either. Standing up for yourself while being considerate.
Exactly. So how do you get better at being assertive?
Yeah, how do you do that?
First, know yourself. What are your needs? What are your boundaries? What makes you feel respected?
It's about knowing what you're okay with and what you're not okay with.
Exactly. Once you know those things, you can start communicating them. Use clear, simple language, make eye contact, speak firmly but respectfully.
So you're not being bossy, but you are being clear about what you need.
Yes. Own your truth and say it with respect. And if someone crosses your boundaries, address it assertively.
How do you do that? How do you stand up for yourself without getting aggressive?
Set limits. Say no. Tell them what's making you uncomfortable.
So finding that middle ground between your needs and their needs.
Exactly. Assertiveness is key for communicating well and having healthy relationships. You learn to say what you need, set boundaries, and have tough conversations without losing your cool. Okay, assertiveness makes sense. But what about saying no? That's hard for a lot of people.
It can be, especially if you like making people happy or you're scared to disappoint someone.
Yeah, I think we all struggle with that. We want to help, but saying yes to everything can be really stressful and tiring.
Learning to say no is so important. It protects your time and energy.
So how do you say no without feeling guilty or hurting someone's feelings?
Be direct. Don't beat around the bush or make excuses. Just say no clearly and calmly.
So instead of "I'm not sure, I'm kind of busy," just say "Thanks, but I can't do that right now."
Exactly. And be kind about it. You can say no without being mean, thank them for asking, and explain that you can't commit.
So be assertive but kind. You can take care of yourself and be considerate.
Right. And if you feel pressured, it's okay to take your time. You don't have to answer right away. Just say, let me think about it and get back to you.
That's a good tip. Saying no can be hard, but it's important. It's about taking control of your life and making choices that are good for you. Before we finish up, I want to touch on one more thing. Our inner voice.
That voice in your head, always talking, it can be your best friend or your worst enemy.
It's like a constant companion.
And what that voice says affects our communication, even our whole lives.
So how do we manage that voice? Make sure it's helping us, not hurting us.
Pay attention to it. What's it saying? Is it positive or is it negative and putting you down?
Tune in to that chatter. And once you hear those negative thoughts, what do? How do you stop them from messing things up?
Challenge them. Ask yourself, is that really true? Usually those negative thoughts are just fear, not facts.
So question those negative thoughts and replace them with positive ones.
Exactly. You can also use your inner voice to practice your communication. Imagine yourself having conversations, speaking confidently.
Like giving yourself a pep talk, reminding yourself that you can do it.
Yes. Your inner voice is powerful. Just make sure it's on your side.
Well, we've covered a lot today about speaking and listening. It's amazing how much there is to it. It's something we do every day, but when you really think about it, it's pretty incredible.
I agree. Good communication is at the heart of everything. Relationships, work, happiness.
As we go out into the world, remember to use your voice in a way that matters. Listen with your heart and cultivate a positive inner voice.
And don't forget the power of silence.
That's something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into powerful speaking and listening.